All right, everybody, welcome to the Nomad Strength Show. I'm Ross Hill, your host today. I'm joined by Mike Bledsoe. Mike was the OG Barbell Shrugged host way back in the day, has since gone on to do many, many things in business, including starting the Strong Coach program, which I went through. We finished up my class. I was class 7. So we finished up almost 2 years ago to the day. It would be the end of July of 2 years ago. So thank you, man, for taking the time. I've been looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks for having me. How's it been since you did the program?
It's been awesome, man. Things have probably changed several different times in evolutions of business and things since I finished, but it was good because I wasn't unhappy with that. Those were all good things that happened when things changed. And when I talked to Danny yesterday, did a little IG live with him on the Strong Coach Instagram yesterday, I was telling him all of these things were just awesome because I had all the tools to adapt to these things and all the different ways I wanted my business structure to change. And we talked about the goal setting part of it was huge because if you don't have that long-term vision, when all these day-to-day things come up and try and throw you for a loop, if people don't have that, then they're thrown for the loop too. But if you've got that vision that you're working on, you are able to stay the course a lot more and just adapt and just go straight through it. So I've taken several iterations of my business since then. About 3 months after I left the program was when I decided to go full-time online with everything. And so this was, like I said, I finished 2 years ago. So in October of 19, which was kind of crazy because 6 months later, the entire planet was forced to go online in the health space. So I felt like I had a nice little buffer to kind of get a couple of things rolling before the whole market just became super saturated with that.
There was a lot of people who were doing in person that just right before COVID. I know all of our students they at least knew how to go online. So the people was already even shifting some of their in-person stuff to online, they did pretty good. And the people who got caught with their pants down, it was rough.
And that's where you got to see some of the creativity of the people that needed it out of necessity. You know what I mean? In those kind of situations, which was cool. But there was a lot of stuff that, you caught with your pants down was a perfect phrase because, literally the next day, gyms were told that they can't even open their doors and they didn't know how long that was going to be for. So everybody's like, okay, so how do we take a gym, like a CrossFit gym of 200 clients and train them remotely now when we've never done that or had any of those systems built before? And so that was kind of the nice thing was I had a handful of months to begin to transition all that over myself and work out a lot of those kinks. And then when all that happened, I'm like, whew, I'm glad I'm not having to do this right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was nice. But the pivot part of it was actually where I wanted to start with you because that word was what you used a lot last year in all the Strong Coach language. How do we pivot in business and how do we pivot in life when things get just thrown at you like a worldwide pandemic last spring, right? That nobody knows how to handle. So you guys took an interesting approach to this and you literally holed up in a house in the desert in Utah for a month and just cranked out tons of business ideas and how you wanted to move forward. How was that process during all that for you guys running a business that's what you guys do in the coaching space?
Yeah. And I even tried to get more of my team to meet me in the desert. And, I think that it's interesting that was my response to this mass uncertainty. And I've never been scared of the virus, but what does concern me is human behavior under mass hysteria. It historically has proven to be not good. So as I said, I need to get out of a densely populated area. I was living in San Diego at the time. Well, I was on my way to Colombia. I didn't have a home, so I could go anywhere. That made it easy. And I go, and I want to go out. And out of all the densely populated places, California is probably not going to have the best response to all of this. And so just knowing, like, I'm from the South originally, and Californians are just generally softer. You know, like things that are hard, things that are scary are more scary, and all this stuff.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, I'm out. And ended up being a really good choice. Like Ben, one of our coaches, he was with me for 2 months in Utah, holed up in the desert, and we both said this was the best choice we could have made. You know, everyone else is like in the city and having to deal with all that stuff, and like we were in the mountains. So we're at the base of Zion, and we have all this visual inspiration. I noticed that a lot of my business creativity really comes online when I'm around visually inspiring environments. So in the mountains, near, at the ocean, all this stuff. I know that that really sparks me. So when this whole thing hit, I was watching everything very, very closely, and I go. And I realized that things were not as they seem. The numbers are doing this, and the reporting is saying this. I was like, this is okay. I was like, oh, okay. There is no telling how long this is going to last, because it's supposed to be 2 weeks, locked down for 2 weeks, and then we can all go out. And then that didn't happen. It was like, oh, maybe it'll be a few months, and then it just keeps going.
And now 15 months later.
Yeah, 15 months later, and everyone, and the phrase that I kept hearing from people was, I just want it to go back to the way it was, or I'm waiting for it to go back to the way it was. And I remember hearing that, and I go, I've heard that before. I've heard that from individuals. And it's funny, all the work that I've done with people on an individual basis, I can now see culturally. Yeah. And I'll wait until it gets back to the way it was. It never goes back to the way it was. So immediately I started telling people, like, hey, if that's what you're waiting for, you're going to be waiting for forever, because it ain't happening. There is no going back. There's only going forward. And so that was happening. And man, what a gift COVID was for me in like so many different ways. Yeah. And one was, you're right. We huddled down there in a house in Utah, and I always go back to the principles I teach. The team jokes about that. They go, Mike, you're the first student of the Strong Coach. What we do in our business when we have our meetings and with the way I talk about business is we just talk about the curriculum. And whatever happens in the business makes it into the curriculum. Yes. So the curriculum got a lot of upgrades in the last year. I rewrote everything, and major upgrades. And that was a function of one of our philosophies at the Strong Coach, and that is your clients have all the answers. And so anytime we go, oh, I don't know what to price something at. I don't know what to offer. I don't know what type of result that people, whatever it is that I want to offer. I go, all you got to do is go ask your customers. Go ask your clients. Ask your potential clients. And so what we did was I said, I'm really big on data aggregation. And so I go, I need to figure out what's going on out in the world, because I personally live in a bubble. I've been doing an online business since 2012. Yep. I am not living the same life most people are living, and so even inside of our industry, and so I need to get in touch with what's going on. So I started hosting. I think it was daily. I think we were doing daily.
It was for a few weeks at least.
3 weeks. It was 3 weeks of daily mothership calls is what we called them. And the reason we called it mothership is because we should probably bring that terminology back. It's because when people join the Strong Coach, they refer to our program as the rocket ship. And it was like, all right, well, if you've been on the rocket ship before, come join the mothership. Yep. And we made the call. It was free for 3 weeks every day, and then we backed it down to like, I don't know, maybe twice a week or once a week, and then we finally weaned off of it completely. But what it was anyone who had ever been a student, anyone who had ever spent money with us was allowed to come on this call. And on that call, I was interacting with people. I was taking questions. We were having conversations. We were throwing out ideas on what we could do. It was just a big brainstorm. And there was a lot of things I learned about that in leadership, and really realizing that there was just a lot of people that were looking for somebody to tell them what to do. Yes. And it almost didn't matter what it was, because I mean the way I see it is like sometimes it's good to do nothing, but most of the time it's good to at least say I have my vision. Maybe I should do something to move that direction. Maybe it's just, even if it's just like I'll keep making posts or something like that.
And those mothership calls are really cool too, because like you said, they were from every different class of people that had gone through the program. So like I went through in class 7, so there were 6 classes before me, and at this time there had probably been 4 or 5 more since mine. And so we're also on the call with all these other coaches that have just, dozens and dozens of different perspectives of things that we're trying to do. I mean, so you even just had more options and more people to learn from during those times. And then I'm sure, like you said, that was helping you get all of that kind of at one moment too. Like you're getting all of these different questions and how should I handle this situation and all this kind of stuff, and having one place where everybody was together. I mean, for just those 3 weeks, I can see how, that probably would have been a lot to do every day for more than just 3 weeks. But for those like 3 weeks, that was super helpful for that reason alone, just the vast expanse of perspective.
Yeah, agreed. And I got to hear where people were at, and it was, I pivoted things in my own business, and I witnessed other people tell me their problems, and I gave them, I suggested a solution, and some of them executed on that, and other people did not execute on that. I remember telling certain people, hey, this is what you should do, and they were like, okay. And even admitted they had some resistance to making that change, and then they did not do it, and they ended up suffering. The business ended up suffering from that. So it was really, and for a lot of the people that were doing what I suggested to do, a lot of times it did not work. But all they had to do is come back and go like, that thing that you suggested I do, it didn't work. And I go, okay, well, let's try this. Because we really just want to fail quickly and fail forward. It's like, okay, good. Well, we know that doesn't work. So let's just keep chipping away. And in that process, we did 3 weeks and then backed it off once a week. But I was also getting on the phone with people individually. Yeah. So because of that call, we had a lot of action in Slack at the time. That's what we used to use for our messaging between us and our clients. And we were just using a lot of, there was just so much communication that I found myself every day just getting on the phone with people and jamming on ideas. I mean, things from, our students, but also I was getting on the phone with other industry leaders. Like I remember getting on the phone with the CEO of Aleco, Eric, and he and I jamming out about like, what does the world need right now? Yeah. So it was a really broad spectrum of conversations that we were having. And, I also saw a really big spike in people signing up for our programs. So while everybody in the world is freaking out about not being able to make money, I saw this huge influx of cash come in. And what happened was a lot of people who were they were like, oh, I think I want to coach or whatever. Maybe they lost a job, or they realized how much uncertainty there is, or maybe they realized their own mortality, or whatever it was that caused them to, I need to take action. So we got a big influx of those people. And then there's always the people that are, they're watching in the periphery and they're going, I'll join one day, someday later, I'll get started on my own business. And so there's a lot of people who just didn't take action. The majority didn't take action. And then we saw this huge dip in membership and registrations throughout the fall and early winter and early spring. even though we were making all these changes that would make it easier to join and improve the experience, and we were working a lot, and it was really just the market, the people that were going to take action took action, and the people who were hesitant were going to remain hesitant, and so it got tight throughout the winter. Like, winter was actually winter in many respects. Yeah. So,
so when you were going through this, I was just gonna say, when you were going through this process of rebuilding everything, so you don't think that had much to do with all the changes internally in the program? It was just more of like, this is the kind of just the climate, for lack of a better word, right now with everything going on. It wouldn't necessarily have to do with the program itself.
I imagine that the changes also made it a little more difficult. But what we saw happen before we made the changes, we saw lead flows slow down. So we saw way fewer followers coming in. Email marketing wasn't not email marketing. Facebook ads weren't working. Yeah. You never run ads around election time, so 2 to 3 weeks before the election, and then like a few days afterwards. You pretty much don't want to run ads because the cost of your ads is going to be astronomical because you're competing with political ads. Yep. And then, come January, Apple did an update to their software that basically made it very difficult for Facebook ads to get through into iPhones. And we actually saw 75 our ad stuff went down 75%. So there was a lot of outside factors, and a lot of the changes we made were after we saw the change in the market. I think that some of the changes we made actually made it a little worse. But I knew that we needed to change to become more sustainable, and the model that we were running is very typical in the coaching space, and I knew that we needed to do something different. But I'm very good at trend spotting, and the trend I was witnessing is a lot of people are selling the same exact thing. It's getting watered down. A lot of people who may not have any business teaching this stuff, or their claims around what they're teaching is like much greater than it actually is. Right. And there's a lot of people flooding into the space. We really need to become. I made changes to the company that made it a more long-term brand. Like, this is something that lasts decades, not something that a coach wants to come out and offer a program, and 2-3 years in, they're like, oh, I'm going to move on to a different thing. And so, and I'm not saying that I won't move on to other things, but the brand in itself, the brand, the Strong Coach, I want to solidify it, even if that means we make less money, in the coming months, or maybe even the coming year. I know that in 5 years, this company is going to be solid. It's going to stand out in the market as a leader. So a lot of what we were intending. A lot of our intention around what we did in the last year was solidifying ourselves as a leader, even if it meant doing things that were, I guess, unpopular or not as that may have hurt the cash flow in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to be a lot better.
And the long-term thinking of it is something that we go over in the program a lot when we're talking about setting long-term goals. And it was, the first time I had ever been introduced to the concept of setting a goal 10 years out, right? And that is like a freaky concept for a lot of people to go through. Like, what do you mean 10 years? I'm having a hard time thinking of 60 days from now. What do you mean 10 years? That doesn't even exist. But that mindset of being able to cast a vision that far in advance gives you such a advance and an advantage when like all these things happen where, like we're talking about global pandemic, all these, market adjustments, all these things, it keeps you on track a little bit easier. And so how did that happen for you specifically? like to get to that point? Was there, because all of these things we're talking about pivoting usually are as a result of something happening to us, and then like now we have to pivot and make better decisions. But was there like a certain instance where you hit this kind of like, okay, I need to start thinking way more long term now, maybe instead of just like a year out?
Yeah, I started studying entrepreneurship in 2000. What was it? 2009. I broke down. I was a gym owner, and I broke down and realized that if I wanted to have the life I wanted to live, I needed to learn business. And I started studying business. And then I realized when I started studying business that there's different types of entrepreneurs. And there's even personality tests out there that will tell you what type of entrepreneur you are. My favorite one is wealthdynamics.com. And as I started learning about, I didn't even have to take a test to learn this, but I was watching a seminar online where the guy that was teaching it, he was talking about the different types of entrepreneurs. And he called it a type E entrepreneur. It's also referred to as like a visionary. And all this, and I quickly realized, I go, oh, my personality is, I am geared towards being a visionary. I used to be very much so a daydreamer. I daydreamed a lot, and I also found that I thought about the past very little, but daydreamed about the future a lot. And I could also see things in the future, and I also recognized that I could see trends. Like I go, oh, I opened up a CrossFit gym in 2007 because I knew it was going to be popular. Right. What I was really interested in opening was a weightlifting gym. But when the first time I did a CrossFit workout, I realized, I go, oh, this is the future. This is way more fun than weightlifting. If I want to fail, I'll open a weightlifting gym. If I want to be successful, I'll open a CrossFit gym, and that's going to allow me to do weightlifting and all that. So I recognize, I go, oh, I'm good at this trend thing. I'm good at this visionary thing. I need to hone that. So I started buying books from authors who were CEOs, that were visionary CEOs, and I was reading their books. And I was starting to learn about how to create a vision. And I would, every business conference I went to, there would be something about vision. And I had a very difficult time with it. Even though I was naturally gifted at daydreaming, what I found was really difficult was defining it, right? Is taking that daydream and then pulling it into, the word define in itself is to make something finite. And people want to, I think we have this natural thing that says, I am infinite. And it's the same thing that happens when coaches say, oh, I want to serve everybody. I'm like, well, you can't. Right. You got to leave some for the rest of us. Quit being such a selfish hog. So the idea of making myself finite can feel like it's restricting. And so, because everything is possible, the possibilities are infinite. What you could accomplish in your life is infinite, but what will happen is going to be finite. You will not be able to live out every timeline in this consciousness and enjoy that. It's just not going to happen. You have to choose, and I think people are afraid of making that choice. And when they and by not choosing, they're just choosing the past. And so people are generally just living in Groundhog Day. But I'll go back. I'm looking at vision. I go, I have a hard time creating a finite vision because I'm scared that if I commit to this, then I have to, even if I don't want to do this anymore, because I had watched myself shift over the years. And I was like, oh, I thought I wanted this, and then I accomplished it, and I didn't want it. And I also watched myself follow through on things that I realized I didn't want to follow through on, but I did it anyway because I said I would. Yes. And I'm real big on keeping my word for sure, especially when I'm making commitment. But I also believe that you can also change your words. Like, look, I know that 2 years ago I said this, but this is what's happening for me now, and communicating and shaping. Like there's people treat the world as if it's this static thing, and it's not. It's this process that's very pliable. And the people who treat it as pliable tend to adapt quickly and have a good time, and the people who treat it as static complain about how things are. You know, it's not like it used to be, or it's not the way I wanted it to be. It's like, yeah, all right, well, we got to shift. So one of the hurdles that I had to get over was creating a finite vision with definition, with making it high def, and being okay with changing it or shaping it. And what I recognized over time as I did this, and I had like my vision be completely dashed before. You know, I was running a company, and we partnered with the wrong people, and it went south, and we lost everything, and I had this vision that was just not going to be realized anytime soon because of the current circumstances. And so I've had the heartbreak of watching my vision just get dashed across the rocks. And it's heartbreaking. But to me, there was not a specific moment in time. It was a process. Yeah. It was a process of every day I put attention into my vision, and I define it more, and I change it, and it keeps shifting. But I get better and better at becoming more accurate with my vision. And I also spend way less time daydreaming now. I'm not much of a daydreamer anymore. I define the vision, and then I spend the rest of my time focusing on being present. So being a daydreamer, like being a visionary, the shadow of the visionary is a daydreamer. Yeah. And a healthy expression of it is being able to create a vision, communicate it well, create a strategy around that vision, know your priority, and then be present with what you're executing that priority. That's the magic.
When you talk about changing or making alterations to the vision, when you go back and, you know, things have changed in your own life or externally and in whatever situations, I think one of the things that can get difficult for people to understand is they hear, well, you can change this, but we need to have a period of time where we let something play itself out a little bit, because oftentimes people will not give things enough time before they go in and want to change something. And so is there, do you have like a recommendation on minimum give it this amount of time before you even have this conversation with yourself?
I think it's very personal, and this is where pattern recognition comes in really handy. In pattern recognition, everyone is capable of recognizing patterns, but you first have to be aware of a lot of data points to spot patterns. So most people just aren't practicing enough awareness. You're like, oh, I'm not good at spotting patterns. Like, well, you're just not very aware yet. So the more awareness that comes online, what will happen is, for instance, I know that one of my patterns is every 2 to 3 years, I desire this big shift in my life. And a lot of times I'll take a perfectly sound business and make a bunch of changes to it, like dramatic changes, just because I feel like it. You know, I hear coaches say this too, like, oh, my offer doesn't feel aligned anymore. I'm like, yeah, it may not be. That may be accurate, and you just might be. Is that a pattern? You know, how many times has it not felt aligned? And how many times have you changed it? And what was the period of time? You might notice, oh, it's every 3 years, or it's every 6 years, or it's every, whatever it is. And so just recognizing that pattern. And then that pattern may be fine. You know, it might be, instead of just saying, you know what, I need to break through that pattern, it might mean, every 3 years I change gears. So what I need to do is make sure that I have a transition plan. So that when I transition, it's not so jarring for my clients. It's not so jarring for my financial situation. It's, because people know that have been through transition, it can be jarring to not just you, but everyone else in your life. And so that was one of the things that caused me to learn how to smooth out my transitions. I recognize, you know what, I may feel like a transition. I might just do it. So I need to be prepared for that transition, and so that the people around me won't suffer like they used to suffer. Like I had people that used to be in my life when I went through transitions, they would suffer because I would go from first gear to sixth gear, and which was fine for my own emotional state, but for everything around me, it was like there was a lot of catching up that had to be done. And I was a bit stubborn, so like I'm changing, or I'm changing gears.
Yeah.
You're either with me or you're not. So I think it's good to recognize that and either prepare for it, or, and the other side of it is I've also noticed this with myself, and I've noticed this with other people, is Napoleon Hill talks about this in his book Think and Grow Rich, and Outwitting the Devil, both, is he talks about, the most people quit when they're like 1 inch from the finish line, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know how close we are from the finish line. And what I found is when I started getting better prepared for these transitions that could come up in the future, I'm like, oh, every 2 to 3 years I have a transition. As I started to prepare for those better, what I found was the preparation for the transition was satisfying enough. And I go, oh, I don't really like me preparing for the transition was the transition.
Right.
Like I make myself, like, in order for me to transition with a business, I have to make myself unnecessary. And if you don't make yourself unnecessary and you step away from a business, it's going to crumble.
Yeah.
So my job is, what I've recognized over the years, is within 3 years, I have to make myself unnecessary. And it creates a beautiful system. It creates a beautiful team. That mentality creates the business that I've always wanted.
Yeah.
And then when I was younger, I was always changing businesses in order to try to find the one that was going to fit. But what really needed to change was my approach to how I was doing business.
So we are like 3 years right now into Strong Coach, right?
That's right. That's right.
So are you, do you consider yourself unnecessary right now at this point?
I'm getting closer.
Yeah.
So I've made a lot of progress towards becoming unnecessary. Like I put a lot of effort. I put an exceptional amount of effort into the Strong Coach since March. Exceptional. It's one of those where my girlfriend's like worried. She goes, "Is this how when we first met, you didn't work like this." When we first met, I was working like 10 hours a week. Seriously. Yeah. I was making plenty of money. I was working 10 hours a week. She was working hard and was like, "What the hell?" And I living the good life over here. But what I realized was, normally what I would do like 2.5 years in is I'd start looking for the next opportunity. And so what I did this time is I'm going to really just make this business bulletproof. And I'm going to make the program as good as humanly possible. I'm going to make the marketing run without me, because still most of the leads come through my personal Instagram or podcasting. I'm gonna make, my goal is to make it to where my own personal posts on Instagram and me podcasting is the cherry on top. We can always add in, we can always pull more people in. So I started building the team to make me unnecessary. I started delegating. I gave some people raises. I fired some people. I made some shifts in the company, and actually still making some shifts as we go, and I'm really enjoying that process. And it feels, the company that I'm running today is very different than the company I was running 1 year ago. And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying. So like it feels really, really good. It feels like the business I've always wanted, and I've never taken a business this far in regard to how systematized everything is.
Yeah. Talking about you going through this period of time where you're like ultra work mode, right? These last handful of months. It was one of the things I talked about with Danny yesterday when we were doing the Instagram live on the Strong Coach account, there's going to be periods where that's necessary, where like you need, like if you're in the process of building something, like they're going to be the 14 plus hour days that you just, you have to do because you need to get some certain stuff done. But one of the things that was really kind of eye-opening for me going through the program was that doesn't need to be the norm, just because the work hard mentality is what is maybe sometimes overused in a lot of instances when it comes to entrepreneurship. Like working hard just for the sake of working hard, not for the sake of getting things done, seems to kind of be romanticized in a lot of ways. So people just like grind themselves into the dirt and then they're toast, and then they ultimately end up being not productive at all as a result of that. So it's important to note, because you brought it up, like you were going from pretty much not working really, 10 hours a week to like we could say that not doing much at that point in terms of time commitment, and then going to this crazy insane thing. But that's important to know that these phases like this need to happen. It doesn't need to be one thing like that all the time.
By the way, me working a lot is 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. Okay, so it's not like I'm not
even that.
Yeah. I'm like, oh man, I put in 30 to 40 hours this week. Oh shit, like that was intense. And I got friends that are pulling like 60-hour weeks, and I go, what are you doing? Like, like you seem very ineffective if you're having to work that much. And it's like you're not doing the impact your business does not reflect the hours you're putting in.
Yes.
Yeah, it's temporary. And that's what I was saying. My girlfriend's like, is this how it's going to be? Something changed. I'm like, this is not how it's going to be. Like this is a specific. I see what needs to get done. It's going to last a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I'm making a shift, and I've got a big goal ahead of me. So it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be uncomfortably long for me to do it, because if I was inside my comfort zone the entire time, I'd be doing the same thing. Discomfort only comes when you're doing something new, and working hard and grinding and the hustle is a great gear to have developed. It's a skill.
Yeah.
And it's a gear. It's one out of maybe 10 gears. You don't want to rely on that one gear. You're going to wear it out. You want to balance it yourself out and rely on other skills, like how much time do you spend working hard versus thoughtful strategy for planning out your week. And there's all this stuff. We started using a new software to organize ourselves in the last 2 to 3 months. We're one of the beta users. My buddy developed it. It is incredible. It's incredible. Danny and I, we're the first two in the team to really use it. We're going to onboard the rest of the team into it soon. He and I both have doubled our productivity.
Wow.
So I've got more free time. I'm getting twice as much done. Danny's actually working a little more, and that's because he admitted to me yesterday. He goes, like, I was trying to hold so much in my head that I didn't know what to do next. So it was like he spent a lot of time in hesitation. He goes, now everything's so clear. So we're using this software that tracks and I've used some of that, of what I've learned from using this software to make the program for the Strong Coach better, because this software would be overkill for most coaches, especially if there's no staff. But the concepts are taught in it for sure. And it's amazing that most people are working, they spend 2 to 3 times more time than they actually need to get the same amount done. Yeah. And being effective is a skill, and it doesn't happen from working hard. It comes from spending time inside of the skill of strategy and prioritization. And yeah, in order to have a strategy, you have to know your vision. And in order to know your priority, you have to have your strategy. And so these 3 things work together. One leads to the next. And if you're confused about one, just go back. go back a level. But the thing is especially in the Western world, people aren't taught vision or strategy. And then you know, as a kid, you go to school and they tell you what your priority is, and your entire job is to execute. And then when you get to high school, maybe you get to set some of your own priorities. Maybe you get to pick some classes or something. Mm-hmm. But there's no real strategy going on. And then you get to college, and then it's like, okay, well, you can do anything you want inside of these, 10 studies. So it's not really whatever you want. It's these 10 things. The amount of choice that people think that they're actually working inside of is that people are experiencing false grandiosity, and you're never taught vision, right? So you're taught limited prioritization, limited strategy, no vision. People may talk about it, but it's not practiced because you're always working inside somebody else's structure. So if you're working for somebody else, or you've been in the military like I was, or you've been in the school system, which I was not, then so I've seen all the both sides. Yeah. I go, oh, I have a lot of advantages because I spent a lot of time not in someone else's structure. I was responsible for creating my own structure. And so we just have an opportunity to develop ourselves, develop our vision, develop our strategy making, instead of just working hard. And you'll find that what I found is that working hard gear that I developed my entire, from the age of 12 to 35, man, I'm so good at that. I don't even have to work hard. I don't need to put much attention into it. Like, if I got to flip this switch. And this is the beautiful thing is I went from working 10 hours a week to 40. We'll call it that. And I had so much gas in the tank. When everyone else is freaking out, I'm just like, it's because they were already pegged. They were already at the red line. Right. And then the pandemic hit. I was hanging out in 1,000 RPMs. I was idle, basically. And it was like, oh, the race is starting. Oh, cool, I'll get going, And then everyone else is redlining, and I'm just like, right by them.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the extremes of the environments that you came from in the sense of structure, right? Because you were the homeschool route growing up. Not much, probably some, structure. You weren't just, got to necessarily do literally anything. There was some sort of curriculum at some point.
But you know what? I always remember it was a conversation between me and my parents about when I was going to study what and in what order. And I had a choice in choosing the textbooks and all that stuff.
But then you go from that to literally the most structured existence that you can have, being in the military, polar opposites. So was there like a pull to that because it was just so different than what you did, or you needed that opposite perspective to balance things out a little bit?
Yeah, I think unconsciously I was wanting that. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, shit, man, I was 18 years old when I made that choice. And I had no idea what I wanted to do for myself. The idea of going in the Navy and being a badass, that sounded cool. I was like, oh, I get paid to shoot things and blow things up, swim underwater. That sounds like the best job ever. Fuck it, I'll sign up. Yeah, the marketing worked. Fucking Charlie Sheen got me, but Charlie Sheen and Tom Cruise, that was it. Yeah. By the way, if you haven't figured it out, folks, Hollywood is just marketing. So primarily for the government. Primarily for the government. How many movies have you watched about the CIA?
Oh, man. So
many. The CIA is so cool according to the movies, right? So like,
I get a drop from the ceiling with a rope hooked onto my waist, and like,
yeah, and they're looking out for our good, right? So, anyways, but so I think being drawn to that was like, it was, I didn't know what I wanted, so I just was like, well, I'll do what someone else wants me to do. Mm-hmm. And I'll feel valuable because I'm contributing in some way. Yeah. And I think that realizing that your largest contribution, and what I had to learn was my largest contribution I could bring to the world is by implementing my own vision, is really taking the world in and going, what can I do to be of greatest service? And it's likely not what somebody else wants me to do or thinks I should be doing. And so, being in the military, like by the end of my 4 years, I realized that I was supposed to be doing something different. Mm-hmm. And I read this book on one of my deployments called The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. She also wrote Atlas Shrugged, which is her more popular book, and which the company Barbell Shrugged was named after, if people haven't figured that one out yet. But the whole point of that was to get people, I was like, you should go read Atlas Shrugged. But when I got out, I read that book, and that book really, it was really about a guy who saw that things could be done better. And he was an architect, and he bucked all social norms and convention to do what he knew was right. Like he followed his own conscience, even though he was rejected by society for it. Mm-hmm. And the only people that could see his genius were the other people who were following their own conscience and just wasn't going along with the rest of society. And lo and behold, the people who ended up, like, there was this group of people who all respected each other. And there was like this group of like entrepreneurial superheroes. They were all incredibly successful and geniuses in their way, in whatever it is they were doing, because they had gone on their own path. But they were also rejected by society and attacked by unions and lobbyists and basically, gangs. People would gang up on individuals. Mm-hmm. So that book also highlighted, I was like, oh, unions are just gangs of people who are upset with an individual, the people who are running the company. Like, it's like, it's not as what's the word I'm looking? Noble as people as it's made out to be, right?
Right.
So
also some ridiculous foresight and parallels to, if you pay any attention to what's kind of going on right now in the world, like,
man.
Are you a time traveler? Because this is kind of scary how accurate this is.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to like spotting patterns, is I remember reading The Fountainhead and going, oh wow, this is how the world is right now. And I remember reading Atlas Shrugged and going, wow, this is where the world is going right now. Yeah. And then also reading 1984, and I think it's okay for me to talk about this now, but because enough time has gone by. But I had a top secret clearance in the Navy, and I saw a lot of communication about what was happening in different things. I was in intel briefings. I knew what was going on from these are the facts. Like, these are just the facts of what happened. And I remember getting exposed to this information, and none of it was like, oh my God. I mean, some of it was, but like most of it was just like, yeah, there was a battle, and this happened, that happened, that happened. There was many casualties. This was the result. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. But then 12 hours later, I would see the news report it. We would be watching the news, and these motherfuckers were completely off. They were like, and then I was like, oh, MSNBC is reporting it like this, Fox is reporting it like this, CNN is reporting it like this. I'm like, oh, they all have their own lens in which they report the same exact thing. And I saw it happen day after day after day after day, and I go, Oh, this propaganda thing is
Very real.
interesting. It's very, very real. And so I read 1984, and so I was exposed to that in the early 2000s when I was in the Navy. I had read these books, and so when you collect enough data, you start to see the patterns and the trends. And what can be challenging is when you want to share that with other people. You're like, I want to share with you what I see. But the problem is in order for them to see what you see, they have to have accumulated all that data themselves.
Right.
Because I'm telling somebody something, and they're like, oh, I don't believe it because of this. I'm like, oh, you're dismissing that because you don't know about all this other stuff over here. Did you know about this, 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 and this? And they go,
Right.
no. And it's like, okay, well, it's going to take me about 2 hours for me to break all this down for you.
I've been studying this for 10 years now, so strap in.
Yeah. I was like, this has been and I've actually studied economics since I was in high school. I was fascinated with economics and constitutional law, so much so that I went into political science at one point, but then realized that the only thing I was really going to be able to do with that was become a professor or a lawyer. And, lawyers are, just liars. So they're
Just mispronounced.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're just twisting law into their own, benefit. So it's like, I was like, I'm not doing that.
From a human behavior standpoint, and I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember if it was done in Germany or in Russia, but there was a psychological study done in like the 30s or 40s, and it was just so applicable to what went on last year, which is why I kept seeing it come up in a lot of places. But they would do essentially like these brainwashing propaganda type messaging towards a group of people. And essentially what ended up happening was, I think the timeline was like 8 to 10 weeks. So 8 to 10 weeks in a row of this, just pounding these certain messages in their head. After that timeline, it wouldn't matter how much counter information that person was told, their mind would never be changed. It wouldn't matter if you could, with 100% certainty and facts, prove to them that what they've been told is 100% wrong. After like 10 weeks, I think it was, they would never change their mind about it. And you look at everything, like in terms of national discussions are happening right now, it's like, oh, well, this is kind of a pointless argument because you guys have been 15 months into this. Like it's, not 15 weeks. It's kind of a lost cause in a lot of instances, just from the psychological standpoint.
Agree.
It's super interesting.
I agree. Yeah, I've done a lot of reflection on how people's views were shaped, and then what people believe is shaped through a couple things. One is the repetition. So it's just repetition. Repetition alone. The more you're exposed to information, the more likely you are to believe it to be true. That's what the research shows. I think everyone, if they check in, they go, oh, that is true. And then the other thing is if you can create an emotional response, and fear being one of the strongest, if you can create an emotional response that coincides with the information, and this information becomes embedded very deeply into the consciousness. So what we have is that's one factor. So fear creates tunnel vision. So if anyone is experiencing, if I'm talking to somebody, and when I'm talking to them about the subject of whatever it is, and I watch the nervous system start to elevate, and they're getting short in breath, and they start name calling. There's all these things that happen when our prefrontal cortex shuts down and we start going into survival, and we start going to just what we know, right? What we believe, instead of being able to have a conversation. When I witness people go into that, I go, you know what? Don't worry about it. This is a pointless conversation.
Yep.
But you can also say, when we recognize that when someone is coming from that place of survival and fear, that they're operating out of probably a false belief and program. That's and this is what happens at the individual level. I've done a lot of work around like emotional development. And that's really what we find. I worked with people over and over again. I was like, oh yeah, you had this stressful, traumatic experience when you were younger, and now you're committed to the world looking this way. Perfect. There's a way to rewrite that, but to do it for an entire culture, very, very difficult. The other thing is the ego hates. The ego will die. People will choose death over being wrong.
Yeah.
And I watch people like dig in and argue. And so people got online and they started arguing, and I go, and I was in there a little bit in the beginning. I was like, all right, a few weeks in, I was like, I'm going to back out of here slowly because this is not safe.
Yes.
And the people, like, they don't want to admit to themselves that they're wrong, and they definitely don't want to come out publicly and say that they were wrong.
Yeah.
And so, and people, another thing is people really want to fit in. They really want to fit in. I've seen children of, the top health experts in the world that I know, the people who are true health, not medicine, not Western medicine, not allopathic. People who are into treating the human body and the human spirit, not just a symptom. There's a pretty strong consensus amongst those people that a lot of what's being recommended is not a good idea. And so I've witnessed some of these people, their children are in school. They're doing that, and their children are getting upset with their parents, and the kids know. The kids know, and they believe their parents over what the school's telling them, but they don't want to be seen. Someone got mad because I was hanging out at the house without a mask, and someone took a picture, and they were afraid that there was going to be a picture of them on Instagram around somebody who's not wearing a mask. Yeah. And they fucking flipped out. Like 15-year-old loses their shit. Yeah. And I'm going, oh wow. And she doesn't even believe all the bullshit completely.
Just didn't want to be seen as different.
Yeah, didn't want to be. So watching that element play out too there's just been a lot. I've learned a lot about humans in the last year and a half, and the big thing is just all the stuff that I've learned about people as individuals and individual human development. I've been able to watch it play out on a cultural level.
It's the line from, I think it's the first Men in Black movie with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, when they're talking about why don't people just know about all the aliens that are walking around among us, right? And, he's like, because Will Smith's like, people can handle this. People are smart. And Tommy Lee Jones's line is great. He's like, a person is smart. People are dumb. And it's like, that's pretty accurate representation of what's going on. Like on an individual level, people understand a lot of this stuff, and even, will admit to themselves and to others that, these things, like you said, that they understand things that are going on. But the moment you look at them in a group, it's the group as a identity of people, not as the single individual. Yeah.
The herd is dangerous. The herd is dangerous. Yeah.
It's been, and you said learning about culture, but learning about it and realizing there's all these things that I thought about. It's kind of a bummer in a lot of ways, obviously, but you realize oh, this is how, if something else were to happen, people are just not going to make it, There's a lot of ways this could be handled, or things that be handled that are this is not how I thought this place would handle this, and it's not going to be good,
Yeah, I experienced a lot of, I experienced some depression last year. I experienced, a lot of grief. Last year I experienced loss, and that grief and that loss and the depression, those episodes, what's great is the work that I've done emotionally. I can experience sadness, grief, all these things, recognize it for what it is, know it's going to pass, and just enjoy it. But really coming to grips with humanity. I had a lot, I was holding humanity to a much, higher standard than, everyone everyone knows that, or should know by now, that, you know, you really get to see someone's character in stressful situations. That's when the character comes out. And the character of we'll just call them Americans. I'd say the character of the Americans was very disappointing. And I experienced that. That's why I was experiencing grief, and I was experiencing loss and sadness. And I was just like, wow, I really thought we were doing better than this. I was living in a fantasy, and I was not in touch with the reality. And this is what it took for me to become more in touch with where things are at. And it's been very, very difficult for me to adjust my expectations and my standards. And it's been interesting to watch myself. Like, the result of me lowering my expectations for humanity has caused me to actually care more about the people who are closest to me.
Yes.
And basically just go, you know what? That group over there is so fucking unpredictable that I can't trust them to behave. So, you know what? I got my circle. I got very selective about who I spend time with, and fortify from there.
Yeah. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on a show that I was actually a guest on, but that's one of the, as like you said, as sad and bummed out as that whole concept, because I felt the same way. Like, it's like, wow, I thought we were, for as much as we're told that Americans are like the light on the hill, right? We handled this whole thing pretty poorly. But one of the things I think that was good about it was that focus on bringing things back closer to home and local and your immediate family and community, and taking care of that as a priority rather than focusing on things thousands of miles away that have nothing to do with you and won't impact your life at all anyways. You know, that's, I think if there's a couple of good things to come from it, which there were, it just depends on how you look at it. But that, I think, was one of the big ones for me anyways.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of communities get stronger. I saw some communities dissipate that weren't that strong, but I'm in Austin, Texas now, which I was not a year and a half ago, and the community I have here is incredible. I did a group workout with 80 men yesterday. They were all, conscious, strong men who are trying to make the world a better place. And it was invigorating. And I go, oh my God, yesterday gave me hope. I was like,
that's awesome.
I am surrounded by solid men. I haven't been around this many solid men, and I don't remember how long. So that was really beautiful. I've traveled international in the last year and a half. I live in America. It's a choice. I looked at living elsewhere. America's still the best place on the planet. I think that the intention of the founding fathers is the light on the hill. If you look at the Federalist Papers, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, these things are all founded in very solid philosophy around sovereignty, freedom. It's very anti-slavery in its intention and the way it's written. The way it was applied, there's problems with that, and I think that that's where a lot of people have found issue, is the application was not pure, and because of that, people want to throw out the philosophy that it was based on.
Which is why they wrote it the way that they did, knowing that men are fallible. Like, it's not about the actual individuals that are writing this. It's about the idea that they are writing that will stand longer than these guys being on the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the intention of the United States was that we would be ruled by law, not by men. And everything up into that point were nations or sovereign groups of people that were ruled by men, not by law. And anytime you're ruled by men, which is what most Americans want right now. Most Americans are they want a man to be in charge or a woman. They want a person to be in charge and save them, which really sets yourself up for tyranny. But it only takes one crazy ruler to get in to fuck things up. And that was what, you're right, that was one of the intentions of the Founding Fathers, is we're a nation ruled by laws, which limits the ability of these men and women in public office from doing too much dumb shit.
Yeah.
But that's all getting trampled on right now.
Yeah, and has been for decades, but just
this is not new.
It's just more obvious now than it has been in the previous, probably close to 100 years, honestly. It's things that have been in the works for a long time, which is just kind of again a bummer. But
it's been a slow it's been a slow erosion with some spikes and this and that. So for sure.
I want to shift gears a little bit onto the actual health side of things, because from a health standpoint, and bringing it into the pivot again, that word pivot, you've had essentially, probably half a dozen iterations of yourself when it comes to how you train and how you live and how you eat on a health side. And there are a handful of things that you specifically, just from following and watching what you're doing, have introduced me to, that have changed a lot about how I approach health as well. And so I'm curious to go back to what we were talking about, that 2 to 3 year transition period. Do you find that it's about that same amount of time when it comes to health stuff? Like, you did weightlifting and then CrossFit and then or we all started doing bodybuilding stuff when we were teenagers, right? Like it was all Arnold, it was all that. So we all kind of follow these same, on the coach side of things, I find everybody kind of follows the same pattern. It's like we all start just because we want to get huge and jacked and tan and Arnold, and then we find CrossFit, and then from there we found kettlebells and Olympic lifting, and then from there we find like all these other alternative health things. So like, how has this process the last handful of years for you specifically changed from what you thought a decade ago?
I'd say it was 2015. It was 2015. I had hernia surgery, and I'd been competing in weightlifting. And I was like, yeah, it'll take me a couple months to recover, and then I'll be back under the bar. And I could snatch my body weight again 2 months later. I could definitely do that, but something had changed. And that time off, what I really recognized is that I was not honoring my body. The reason I got injured is because I was basically dominating my body instead of listening to the feedback and being present with it. And I was putting, going to nationals and getting on a podium above my own health. And why did I want a podium? Ego. I wanted a podium because, I run, the world's largest podcast for fitness. And if I don't perform at an elite level, I won't be, people will think I'm a fraud. That was the kind of shit that was like running in the background. I mean, it wasn't like a conscious thought. I was like, I'm not writing down, I'll be a fraud if I don't win. But like, that was the essence of where I was coming from. And so when I had the surgery, which was not my first surgery ever, by the way, when I had that surgery, I was 6 years ago, I was 33. I just turned 33. It was like a week before my 33rd birthday, or maybe 32nd. I don't know, whatever it was. And I had time to reflect, and I got talking to some people. I had a high-level coach, and they were like talking about what my relationship to my body was and all this stuff. And I was like, oh shit. And I go, well, I'm friends with Jill Miller, who is like one of the best yogis with anatomy and kinesiology on the planet, and I know her, and her whole thing is about breath and breathing mechanics. And I go, well, basically my pelvic floor totally bottomed out. I should probably talk to the woman who understands this better than anybody.
Yeah.
So I hit her up, and she sent me her get up. She told me exactly what to do, and I started working on my breathing mechanics. And by really working on my breathing, I realized that the breathing and my spine were my core, which I'd completely neglected. And so from that point forward, a lot of my training, everything revolves around breath and spinal articulation, I guess you could call it. It's like, how well can I move at each vertebrae and stabilize each vertebrae at will while doing complex movements, right?
Gotcha.
And so a lot of what I do looks very simple. Very, very simple, not very complex. It's like, oh, he's moving slow over there in the corner. But what I started doing is learning to articulate each vertebrae, being able to stabilize each vertebrae no matter where I'm at in my breath cycle. And then also being able to rotate where I'm supposed, with the joints I'm supposed to rotate with. Being able to have strength and rotation and in a spherical plane of motion, not just front and back, side to side, up and down. I've got, put me inside a sphere. I'm strong in every direction now. So a lot of my training is about getting strong in every direction while being able to stabilize and articulate my spine at every vertebrae, no matter where I'm at in my breath cycle, and keep my breath smooth throughout all movement. And I've been on that journey for 6 years. And the only thing that's really changed is the complexity of the skills in which I'm able to practice has gone up, and my intensity's been able to go up. But it's been slow. I really let my body heal. It's been slow. I'm pushing more this year than I was last year and the year before that. I went down to like nothing. I was working out like 15 minutes a day, there for 6 years ago, which was down from like my 3 to 5 hours a day prior to that,
How was that in mentally to make that alteration in your head? Was that something that was difficult at first, or did you understand because you were hurt and you needed to recoup, like this is what needs to be done?
It was difficult. It was difficult, and at first it was like, this is what I need to do to recoup, and then months go by and I go, oh, this isn't over yet. And it really started sinking in that until I'm able to stabilize my spine, I have no fucking business doing a push press or doing a handstand or running. I have no business running until I learn how to stabilize. And at first it was like, and then that set in, I was like, I don't know how long this is going to last. And then I had to make a commitment to myself. I go, I'm going to love my body. I'm going to honor my body. And I'm going to, I have a long-term vision. I'm going to think about getting better in the next 10 years because I'm going to live north of 100. And I want to be able to wipe my ass the whole time. And so I think there's a lot of, living a long, healthy life. It's not about how much you can squat. I can promise you that. And and that's definitely some lessons that I got to learn the hard way. But I also watched myself learn them a lot earlier than most people. So I'm actually really appreciative of that injury and the space that it gave me to process.
That's usually the thing that causes the shift in most people is an injury when it comes to like the physical, right? It's like, okay, I guess I can't be doing this way anymore, obviously. So we've got to find another route to take my health and make sure if I want to even continue to be healthy, I've got to change something,
Pain is the great teacher. I'll if someone wants to challenge me on that, I'll definitely I'll open up that one because we start circling around. You'll find out that all your behaviors, the way you've learned to do things, it was all a result of some level of discomfort, whether it be social or whether it be physical. Pain is the great teacher. So it should be, and from my perspective, and the way I approach it is, I am in love with it. I am looking for it. I'm not looking to create it, but I am sensitive to discomfort and pain because I know that that's a signal to do things differently.
And that's where I was going to say too, because that statement on it, when you say that the first time, people would think in a bad way, but it's actually a good thing. The discomfort and the pain. That's because it is teaching you in that moment, which is the whole point. There are lessons to be learned every time you're in those moments.
Yeah. Someone goes, "Oh, my elbow hurts when I do this," and I go, "Well, don't do that." it's like kind of like a no duh idiot, type of thing. But what do people do? This hurts when I do this, and they just keep doing it. I'm like, whoa. Like, what about when if you do this, does it hurt? No, I was like, all right, we'll do more of that then. It's like, it's really not that complicated. Like, people are like, well, I need to go see a physical therapist. And I'm like, well, or you could just stop doing the thing that hurts and then do the things that don't hurt. And see what happens. And then you go to a physical therapist, and that's basically what they tell you to do. They get you to do.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, just do everything that doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Then give me $300 now.
Yeah. I mean, it can be more complex than that, and a good PT is going to be able to do stuff with you. But I find that most people, they're hurt because they did something that hurt, and then they kept doing it, and they just weren't smart enough to put the pieces together yet.
It's simpler than we're making it on many levels.
Yeah, 100.
When you, with your training and your health stuff right now, I know that you've got a coach that you have interviewed a handful of times. And I remember one of the episodes you did with him a couple years back was fascinating because he just has such a cool, holistic approach to a lot of stuff and just introduced ideas that I had never considered when it comes to physical training, right? It's environment related. It's, light around you, like what kind of light is around you while you're training and all of these kind of things. Is there something in the last, since working with him specifically in the last couple of years, that's been like this is a game changer kind of thing that I hadn't introduced before?
I would say mostly around, the last few years, what's been game changing is just honing the nutrition more. Getting away from so many stimulants. So doing less coffee. I don't drink any coffee now. More, like I was already doing cold plunge and breath work, but doing cold plunge, breath work, and like qigong and things like this to build energy in the body without like dissipating it. So more working in, less working out, but also like understanding that my body tends to run hot. So like even temperature wise, like you get close to me, you're like, oh, this guy's running hot. People who run hot are also going to go bald, right? They got all this energy leaving your crown chakra, and you bald. It's just that's how it works. And so there's a lot of factors to that. And people are like, I thought it was because of this. I was like, yeah, but like just energetically, it's from. You look at guys who are bald a lot of times. They're running hot. They're either thinking a lot or they're doing a lot.
Man. I got little to nothing up here already. So.
You're a thinker. Yeah, me
That's
too.
That's good to know.
Like working in more, even working towards thinking less, and saving my energy intellectually, which I go through phases. I've been working a lot, so that's not really been true the last few months. But what's allowed me to work better is lowering the stimulation. So like I've really lowered the stimulation, lowered like caffeine. I've lowered the music I listen to is more chill. Like I am intentionally creating a more zen environment for myself. My cleaning lady comes to my house, and she told told us a few weeks ago that it's her favorite house to clean, and that when she's here, she just feels so calm. And it's this older Mexican woman, probably Catholic, and my girlfriend is half Mexican and grew up Catholic, so they get to talk. And one day she's like asking what all this stuff is, and I was like, oh, it's sage. And she's like, oh, what do you do with it? And I was like, I told her. She goes, will you sage me? I go, yeah, I'll sage you. So I'm in there saging my house cleaner. I was like, man, if the whole world could see this scene right now, it would be tripping out.
What is going on at Bledsoe's place?
Yeah. So, but it was yeah, I've been working at zenning out more. But yeah, as far as like huge major shifts, not anything huge, just more of refining, getting more quality movement, and just focusing on quality instead of quantity. That's really where it's at. With nutrition too, doing like an antifungal, anti-parasite protocol right now. Realizing how much of a role that plays in my behavior. Like when the parasites are basically telling me when I'm hungry, and are dictating my energy and my emotions. And as I clear more of that out, recognizing that, oh, that wasn't me, that was a fucking parasite. People think that they're he's like, oh, that guy's got a demon. I was like, nah, he's probably got some nasty parasites. They're the ones that are making him
messing him up.
Yeah, exactly. So, and not all, and I've also learned that we can test for about 100 parasites, but there's over 1,000 out there. So people will do a parasite test and they go, I don't have parasites. And my coach will look at me and go, you don't even need it. He goes, you could take a test and it may show that you have parasites and it may not. But I can tell you by looking at you that you got parasites. I go, oh, okay. Well, I won't get the test then. He's like, yeah, just do a parasite cleanse. You'll be fine. It's not fun, but it's like you're gonna clear out mold, you're gonna clear out fungus, you're gonna clear out parasites, you're gonna lower the things that pull the energy out of your body, and you are going to increase your human vitality. Does that sound like a good idea? Yeah. All right. Well, let's do that. Perfect.
That's crazy. So what does that look like for you when you go through one of those things? Because I'm sure like when you say there are parasites in people that have never heard that in their lives are like right now freaking out, right? You're like, what do you mean? This is like the movie Alien or what?
Yeah, man. Like, it's interesting. It's interesting. One of my clients, she specializes in parasites, and specifically with women, like hormones and parasites. But yeah, man, there's things that come out in the toilet where you look at it and you go, oh wow, that thing was living inside of me. Okay. A lot of parasites are too small to see. A lot of parasites are just, they're just little tiny things. But there are some parasites that people have where a worm will come out, or, something that looks like a bug comes out, and you're just like, okay, I didn't know. Like, how long was that in there? Who knows? How many were in there? Who knows? But these cleanses, what it does is the parasites are there to feed off of dead tissue, primarily. They also feed off of sugar. So you got to cut out the sugar, and then you got to cut off things that are killing you. So usually parasites are in an environment where there's dead things happening, and having too much mold in your system, and fungus, and sugar feeds the fungus primarily. So the sugar hits that too. So if you have fungus and you have mold, it's lowering the vitality of your cells, and you're having more cell turnover. So your body needs to get rid of the cells. So the parasites are actually there as a gift. They're there to help get rid of and digest all the stuff your body's killing off. So you got to starve out the parasites by eradicating the mold and fungus in your body, and you're raising your vitality, and then eating no sugar. And then from there, the parasites have nothing to eat, so you starve them out. And all the while taking some supplements, mostly herbal supplements, and some things for the intestines to clean you out and to really create an environment where it's not. So you starve out the parasites, but also a lot of the supplements just make the body in a place that's not friendly to the parasites. So that combination means that I'm eating a lot less variety of food. You know, I'm not eating certain types of meat. I'm not eating any grains, not eating potatoes. It's like, it's hard to get carbohydrates.
Right.
And it can be difficult on the energy. So, but long term, man, my skin has gotten a lot better. My energy is more even. Like it's great.
How long has that been going on, like this process to get to, like, is that something you have to do every, handful of months, or is it?
Well, like
Spend a few months doing it?
I've been easing in. I've been doing like an easing in protocol. So I'm not like a full blown antifungal, anti-parasite cleanse.
Yeah.
I'm going to start a full blown one soon. But one of the things I've been doing since February is I just cut out coffee, cacao. These are things that can carry mold. So I just cut out a ton of mold containing foods, and the ones that are really high, I cut those out, and I started taking some supplements to help clean that out.
Yeah.
And so like I'm doing it in stages, so I feel really good with just what I've done so far. And I'm about to go into like a 2-month, like a 60-day like hardcore cleanse, and then from there maybe once a year after that, unless something comes up that says, hey, you need to do a different protocol and move some more stuff out. We'll see.
Yeah. Those periods of time going through, what would be considered extreme elimination type protocols, right? Are very, very helpful diagnostic tools. They can be fun, like to challenge yourself to see if you can do it. Like I just recently I did one back in February, and I just finished up another one with a group of guys. We just did 30 days, super strict carnivore, just to see what would happen, like to see how our bodies would react to it. And immediately the first thing I realized within the first couple of days is my sleep was improved like 200%. Like
nice.
Cutting out all this stuff and just focusing on organ meats and getting all the nutrients from good organs and high quality cuts of meat and nothing else. Sleep was the first thing to improve, and then once your sleep is fixed, man, like that'll fix 90% of other things in your life, basically.
I think the carnivore diet would likely be good. A version of it would be very good to do for parasites, fungus, mold.
Yeah.
Even though you typically cut out red meat and pork for a mold and parasite detox,
okay.
but and you would eat things that fly and swim only. But I talked about this with Alex, my coach. It's like, what if I just went carnivore? And he goes, that might work, because carnivore is like it's a new concept scientifically, but it's an old concept,
right.
human wise. Yeah. But everybody I know that's gone carnivore, like hardcore carnivore, they say within a week they're just blown away by the energy they have, the vitality they feel, their digestion improves. It doesn't improve in the first few days. From what I understand, it can be a little rough.
You have a couple of rough days at first, and it can go either way. Like I've had experiences both times I did it, and had them with other guys, where you either blow everything out or the opposite for a few days.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was super interesting, because each time it was a different experience for me. But the big difference is when I don't have the nutrition from the organ meats specifically, that's when I notice the big difference. Because there's just, if there ever was a superfood, like to get that title, it's liver.
Yeah, liver, man.
So when you don't have
have you had thymus?
Yes. Well, I got it in capsule form from Ancestral Supplements.
Yeah.
They have a thymus one that I take that I like a lot, and that's another one that's great. Those kind of things, you're like, oh, how am I going to get all this nutrients from just meat and whatever? But I'm like, dude, there's no, like, you could take any number of combination of plants on the planet and they won't have the nutritional impact as like 6 ounces of liver. It's
100%.
wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a true
wild.
superfood.
It's awesome. Well, man, we're coming up on 90 minutes. We'll wrap it up. But I did want to tell you a pretty good story just because I told my very first episode I did of this, which to even back up farther, one of the goals that I did when I was in the Strong Coach program was, I can't remember the how long it was. I'll have to go back and look at what I set the timeline for it as, was to start this podcast. I didn't have a name for it or anything. And I put it off a lot longer than I should have. I was working on other things, and then I finally am just like, this is the right time. Very first episode, Anders was the first episode, the first guest on the very first episode, Anders Varner. So I told him this story because he's running the Barbell Shrug podcast right now. And so when I started coaching early, I was coaching before 2014, but I was in college, so I wasn't getting paid to coach. So when I first I actually had it as a job coaching was around 2014. Shrugged was like one of my main forms of content that I was intaking for learning how to be a better coach and all the things that were going on during that time. So I was listening to you guys and all this kind of stuff. And when I was in college, I was studying to be in radio, and I was doing like ESPN internships, and like the dream in college was like, I'm going to do the morning ESPN talk show, right? And then I got into the coaching thing, and I'm like, nope, this is the route. And then it ended up coming full circle back to, I'm kind of doing the radio thing, but I'm doing it in the career that I ended up leaving the radio thing to do. And then the first guest was the guy that runs a show that I used to get this inspiration from at the beginning. And now it's like, now I'm talking to you, which was the original who I was actually listening to. So it was just like this crazy web of full circle stories. So it was just rad that I was able to make it happen, and that we were able to make time to schedule. So thank you again, man, for hopping on. It was awesome.
My pleasure. This this makes me think of a book, Mastery by Robert Greene. You might want to check it out. And talks about most people who do something innovative have mastered 3 different things. So you master radio, you master like coaching, and then we merge these 2. But then what's that third thing? What's the third thing that takes 7 to 10 years to master that interest? And a lot of times it's things that seem like they're not connected at all. Like, oh, what a big jump. But then you fast forward to where you're in your mid 40s or 50s, and then you combine all 3 to like whatever you create couldn't have been possible had you not mastered 3 different things. So the book Mastery outlines examples of that, and it's pretty cool. It gave me a lot of appreciation for like where I'm at. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just mastering something
and
right
also
now.
Also being a little bit more patient with things, probably also
100%.
Understanding that these things take time to build all of this to get to this point, where now it is the unique thing that couldn't exist anywhere else. That's cool. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to get that book today.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you. Where is all of your stuff if people are interested in joining the Strong Coach program or just following you and everything that you guys are doing?
Yeah, go to thestrongcoach.com is where you can find anything Strong Coach. My Instagram is Mike_Bledsoe. And I am working to make a new podcast/YouTube channel. I'll be launching that pretty soon. I don't know what we're gonna call it, and I might do more than one. So I might go, because I'm taking a break right now. I might go from 0 to 2, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, Ross. Thank you.